Last year in the summer, my wife went to her mother's house for a week to help with the household chores. This happens to us from time to time. So I was left home alone. A few friends and I decided to get together as the weather was nice. We had a great time chatting, enjoying the sunshine, and eventually ended up at a bar. After having a few drinks, I headed home, already tipsy and hungry. When I got home, it was past midnight, and I decided to make myself something to eat. I put some dumplings in a pot, added some spices, and realized I had no salt. I wondered if I should ask my neighbors for it, even though it was late. Maybe someone was still awake. I switched off the hob and stepped out into the corridor. I hesitated for a moment, but then I knocked on the next door. A few minutes passed, and just as I was about to leave, I heard rustling and quiet cursing from behind the door. Finally, the key turned and the door opened. There stood my neighbor, Melissa, clearly drunk, barefoot, and wearing a nightgown that left nothing to be desired. She'd just recently moved in from out of town, and we hadn't had a chance to socialize. I asked if she had any salt I could borrow, and she looked at me with a playful glint in her eyes. "Neighbor, why are you so late?" she teased, biting her lip. She invited me in and said, "Come in and have a seat while I check." I followed her into the living room, which was sparsely furnished, just a bed and a few unpacked boxes from the movie. I took a seat on the bed, noticing a half-empty bottle of wine and a glass on the small table beside it. A strange feeling stirred inside me. Melissa came back into the room wearing a barely tied nightgown and a glass of wine in her hand. She snuck over to me and sat down next to me, looking at me with a mischievous smile. "I couldn't find any salt," she said, "but since you're here, why not have a drink before you go?" She poured us both a glass, and we clapped amicably. She leaned closer, her warmth and the scent of wine filling the space between us. She whispered, "You live alone, don't you?" Her eyes read desire and curiosity. I nodded, and she moved even closer, pressing her body against mine. Something changed in the air, and before I knew it, I was pulling her to me. She seemed to have been waiting for this. We lay on the bed, and the rest of it happened by itself.